All right, we're live.
It's a little late, but we're on. All right. Well, we've had some wonderful news, and we can now talk about all about the Panama. Well, not really, but because they haven't finished looking for all of them. But their Panama Papers, international banking, and our new nobility,
Yes, again,
and how
sorry.
they will never, ever, ever go to jail because they haven't actually done anything wrong. There's just evil Panamanians who have tricked them into hiding their money from the government and everybody else. In fact, they aren't really even hiding it from the government.
Yeah.
Since, well, they are the government.
Yeah. No. I mean, well, well, let's not go completely with illegal. At least with, ironically enough, the stuff Vladimir Putin seems to have pulled by Russian law and his own moral standard. He should be taken out back and shot for all the money he's seemingly laundered.
No. Technically, he hasn't laundered any money. He just must have allowed other people to launder money.
And by the own moral standards he has set, someone should take him out back and shoot him.
Yeah, I think that would qualify as illegal.
Yeah.
Yeah, punishment being taken out back and shot.
Mhm.
I'd pretty much call all of this illegal, actually. It's just, are we actually expect anyone who actually matters to face jail time over this?
Unfortunately, no, as it seems to be classified under as everyone's doing it, so why is it wrong?
Well, not everyone's doing it. I'm not doing it. Most of the people I know aren't doing it. Most of the people who don't have a few $1,000,000 aren't doing it.
I'm
Just rich people with good political connections are doing it.
yes, those people, yes. And everyone in that class is doing it, so nothing is wrong. I know you can't
Hmm.
see, I can't do air quotes on face rig, but I'm doing air quotes right now.
Yes, because while other people might get audited and thrown in jail for missing a tax payment or just running out of money and having some sort of fee, which in many places can get you thrown in jail for not paying it, the people who are actually rich and have good connections are just, oh, it was too bad. These corrupt people have they got fooled by them, and they just wanted to minimize their tax burden perfectly legally. And then these evil lawyers and bankers took their money and hid it far away where the tax man couldn't find it because he was told not to look.
Right. Now, in the interest of fairness, and I choose those words very carefully, there are some people that can semi-legitimately claim to that, just in the interest of fairness. The fact is, I am using my words really carefully, and then I'm going to go into something else. Look, there are some people that are wealthy and usually don't stay wealthy for long, that do basically go out and say, yeah, you know what? You're an accountant. You're smarter than me. Just deal with my money. You're sending it where? Great. And really don't pay attention. And so they might be able to claim that. However, the people that have been complaining about how people have been avoiding their taxes on the lower level uh have been claiming that everything's fine in the banking system and things like Dodd-Frank have fixed things.
Well, Dodd-Frank wasn't really made to cover this situation.
Not this, but whenever someone brought up a problem with our banking system and the way money moves around in the world, regardless of it if it applied or not, things like Dodd-Frank would be brought up, even if only just to say, well, the governments are working on the problem, when a bunch of them are the problem.
Well, yes, I mean, Switzerland's cleaned up its banking sector. They no longer have quite so many super secret numbered accounts. And all of that money just went somewhere else. And now there's a bunch of people saying, ooh, Panama, yes, it's an evil tax haven. We'll have to look into our laws about Panama and fix that. So then the money can just go somewhere else and the Panamanians can not get their share of the money that is being hidden away from the tax man and the rest of us poor schlubs who actually have to file taxes.
Hmm.
So yeah, Panama's screwed. Yeah, they're going to lose millions and millions of dollars in revenue because now they're going to be clamped down on, and
Yeah.
all that money can just go somewhere else.
Yeah, and the thing is,
And
that somewhere else needs to be nowhere else. Like, no, people are pretty fucking tired of this.
look, setting aside even the people who had their money in the lovely offshore accounts, how many of the lawyers in this law firm, how many of the bankers, which the records definitely show, were allowing money to be funneled through these offshore accounts? How many of them are going to be prosecuted or threatened with any jail time?
Uh, Likely none.
Oh, I think they'll probably have some sort of motion or something, particularly any lawyers who are actually named in this statement, but probably most of them aren't going to actually face any serious jail time either, because they can just slip away. After all, they're a Panamanian law firm. And anyone who isn't actually caught out in the emails literally saying, hey, let's do this criminal act, can claim not to have known about all this awful stuff.
Mhm.
They were
Yeah.
just protecting their client's privacy.
Oh, yeah. And they were doing what they felt is technically legal, or at least could claim that.
Yeah, and all of this would fall apart if there was an actually serious Interpol investigation of the situation. But somehow I don't think that's going to happen because this is just one small law firm doing this. There are a lot more of them.
Yes. Yes, there are. And this is kind of the problem with the current politics, right? You have the right, which is talking about how you have to lower taxes, and you have the left that's talking about how you should raise taxes. But really, quite frankly, the real problem with a lot of wealthy people is just that they're not paying taxes, and the system has become too complicated to force them. Like, honestly, like, and this is something that a bunch of people have brought up. The tax code needs to be simplified, and the rules need to be much greater enforced, especially on these people.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you have corporate tax, but the corporate tax is only really paid by small and mid-sized businesses. Because if you're a large business, you can effectively afford to use loopholes which allow you to never have any profit ever. And then there's the income tax, which the majority of it is actually paid by rich people, but only those rich people who don't have the right connections to have their money funneled away. And even then, only a portion of their wealth is actually paying the higher tax rates. The rest of it just doesn't seem to exist when it comes to tax time. So you have all this compliance cost of getting a whole bunch of poor people to contribute tiny amounts to the national treasury, while those who can afford it can make sure that the majority of their money never gets touched.
Yeah. No, it's pretty fucking well. I'm gonna try restraining myself. It's pretty damn hypocritical, like, like especially concerning what people have done in politics, like and have pushed lately. Like once and just to say how people aren't learning their lesson. Like in Canada recently, a bank was fined a very large sum. The government won't reveal which bank was fined or why.
Yeah, that's sort of a problem in a liberal Western democracy when people are fined for things and then you don't find out why they were fined for things. I mean, this isn't some sort of private deal where they can agree to, yes, we'll make a settlement with you as long as you never tell anybody what the settlement is. No, government isn't supposed to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm not sure they should actually allow private parties to do that.
No,
It's in the public interest to know if somebody has broken the law and how they've done it. Because who knows, maybe they've done it more than once.
and also just to reward the banks that aren't breaking the law. Like I, if I knew that my bank had uh, done this, I'd pull my money out.
Well, that's probably what they're worried about, is a run on this bank. And then with their new banking law, how everybody's money in the bank will be converted into stock equity in the bank that everyone wants to pull their money out of. But
Yeah.
yes, let's try and preserve the economic system as it is now, because it's so wonderful as it is now, and the economy is doing so well for everyone.
Well, it's just the principle of it, right? Like, we have already had massive problems with the banks where they have been more than generously bailed out and supported. And clearly, no, things didn't go far enough, and they're still not going far enough, and the attitude hasn't changed. Like the banks are important drivers of the economy, and the reason we do have laws is to make sure that certain people aren't able to go off and massively exploit people. Like, to be quite frank, evil people exist. There are sociopaths in the world, and letting them get into these organizations and have their way of saying that with no consequences or little consequences is a massive recipe for disaster.
Well, apparently, if there's rich enough and there's enough of them and they have enough friends in the government, then you have to let them get away with it. Otherwise, you could damage the economy.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, you can't punish them. You just have to let them go and let them continue damaging the economy.
Yeah. And, well, to be quite frank, the political ability for these people to get away with this is just about done. Like, even if Trump doesn't win the Republican nomination, which there's a good chance that he won't, there is the point that he'll have more than enough negotiating power at a broker convention to ensure that his people are going to be put in place, and one of those things will probably be a wall and simplifying the tax code. Not only that, but the other possible contenders for running the Republican presidency, Ted Cruz. I hate that man, but he's not going to tolerate it. At this point, the broker convention compromise pick Paul Ryan. He's not going to tolerate this. On the Democrat side, Bernie Sanders is not going to tolerate this.
Well, while I agree that in many ways, the fact is the outbreak of populism and more fringe candidates is a definite indication that effectively the middle class and lower middle class people have realized the system is skewed against them, and they're really, really angry, and they don't know what to do about it. So you see the rise of Donald Trump, the far right in Europe, and Bernie Sanders. But only Bernie Sanders has actually made a big deal about trying to fix this whole banking situation. That hasn't really been Trump's thing. He's been more immigrants and other countries are ruining our economy because of our shitty ability to make deals.
Actually, to be quite fair to Donald Trump, it has been something he has actually been trying to make a bigger deal of and has been quoted multiple times. The problem is the thing the media keeps focusing on is his more outrageous comments, especially regarding immigrants. And the fact is, other certain politicians have made statements on this. Ted Cruz, again, I don't like him, but he has made speeches, maybe not exactly on this, but on this topic. And even Ryan, before he became leader of the House, was talking about this. The problem is the media has pretty much decided to focus only on their more controversial comments. And with regards to Bernie Sanders, they focus on that a little bit, but usually in the framing of look how much of a crazy communist he is, and he doesn't look that crazy now.
No, it is mainly on this guy's going to ruin the economy. You're going to have to vote for Hillary. Seriously, stop voting for this guy. He's going to he has the right ideas, but he's going to wreck everything. So you have to vote for Hillary. Quite remarkable how journalists who normally attempt to be even-handed have been far more aggressive in their interviews of Bernie Sanders than they have of the Hillary proxies, because they pretty much never get to interview Hillary. But mostly the Republicans have been on the side of simplifying the tax code, which, while it would definitely help in this kind of a situation, is not a direct, we need to actually throw some people in jail type comment. That at this point, seriously, they need to prosecute some people and put them in jail.
Actually, Trump has made those comments. Usually in the context of Hillary Clinton and her friends, but no, at least, especially early on in his campaign, he has made those comments. What I'll agree with you is that not that many politicians have made those comments. It hasn't been pushed, especially in the media, and it hasn't been pushed by a lot of economic writers. Like, this topic has been something pushed or talked about in the far left, along with Bernie Sanders, and the far right, and the libertarians, and the Tea Party. It hasn't been talked about by economists, really, or pushed by them, or the people it really should have been. It hasn't been brought to the mainstream.
Well, that's the thing. And also, they're all coming at it their particular angle. The Republicans want to simplify the tax code. The Libertarians want to get rid of government bureaucracy and privatize everything. The left wing wants to have more government regulation and control over it. They all have their own little thing. Well, they're all avoiding the fact that they're not enforcing the actual laws which exist, and a bunch of people are effectively getting away with ruining the lives of millions of people and profiting from it illegally.
Oh, yes.
Because there's perfectly legal ways to ruin the lives of millions of people, which... whether you think they should be illegal or not is one thing. But if you actually do it illegally, they might want to actually punish those people, possibly discourage them from doing it again.
Yeah. instead of letting them play by their own rules and give them a license to screw people over again.
Well, anyways, it's even worse than that because a lot of the financial sector, effectively all the actually registered banks, effectively are given great big assistance by the government. Not only do they guarantee them with a government insurance program against a certain percentage of their losses, but also whenever they're in trouble, they're allowed to get effectively free money from the federal bank. The Fed funds window is open at low interest rates, and they can borrow almost as much as they possibly want. Effectively, they're almost the epitome of crony capitalism. They aren't really capitalist corporations. They're government funded and sponsored corporations, which whenever the government wants to do quantitative easing, they get a whole bunch of money, which they get to redistribute to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
For free, well, next to free.
Mm-hmm.
No other corporation is allowed to do this. None of the rest of us can go up to the federal funds rate and say, hey, give me a couple $1 million at a 0.1% interest rate, please.
Oh, yes. And
this is not a private, these aren't private corporations. These are agents of government. They're privatized government agencies for printing and redistributing money, which get to make a profit. And they aren't even happy with that. They have to go beyond that to actually wreck people's lives in order to make even more money and skim more money off the top of financial transactions so that they don't have to take any risks whatsoever. Because they'll just play with other people's money and play with the government's money.
Oh, yeah. And it's not also like they aren't being a massive deterrent to the economy. Like, from not just even just the waste of capital resources that have been spent on things like the subprime mortgages of the past, but even just everyday things like the predatory lending that they've been allowed to get away with from those little payday loan companies, or heck, even credit cards. Like, credit cards are what, about 20% interest, and a lot of people, especially young people, get hooked with them and end up with tons of debt.
Yeah.
And when people are with debt overall, well, yeah, there's kind of an initial boost to the economy and spending. Overall, if they have to pay that percentage off, the only way they can pay it is by, well, not spending money on everything else, and consumer spending as a result goes down.
Yeah, no, consumer spending is tanked. Even though the unemployment rate has actually dipped down to actually sort of relatively normal levels, although that doesn't count the number of people who just have given up, everybody's still feeling pretty crappy. Like, they have all these bills to pay, which are constantly overwhelming them, and they're not making enough money, and they seem to feels like they're making less money every year. It's almost as if everything that matters to them is getting more expensive. Well, they are making the same money.
Yeah. And also, like, another problem with the bank in terms of economy, like, they're not, a lot of these people aren't producing anything. We're not getting cars out of this deal. We're not getting computers out of the deal. They're moving numbers around on a balance sheet. Like, all of this money they're earning from, say, credit card interest and all of these other interests, a lot of it doesn't look like, at least from my opinion, going back into the economy here.
Well, the fact is, you do need people to move money around on balance sheets. You do need some number crunchers. You do need your accountants. You do need your bankers. You just need the old boring bankers we had before the 1990s, which basically didn't make that much money and had a really boring, stable job and just shuffled money around so that your money that you put in the bank would go into investing in other people buying houses. Nice, safe, simple investments. You need those people. You just don't need to pay them millions and millions of dollars for shuffling money around and make it so effectively they don't really pay any taxes.
Yep. Yep. No, it's completely and utterly ridiculous. And
Yeah, the only businesses or jobs which should make that amount of money with huge bonuses preferably based on actual performance, are jobs which are really, really risky, that you have to put a lot at risk in order to do and require a high degree of skill and or luck. And then if you lose, you lose.
And there's the key right there. The thing is, they're not being punished. There is no, okay, you lent money out to this person, they're not able to pay you back for whatever reason, you're screwed. That's okay. The government is going to bail you out and pat you on the head, and your company is going to give you still a raise for some reason.
No, it's usually a big fat bonus.
Yes.
Everybody gets a bonus at the end of the year. When the hell did that become something? That all these people in the financial industry, our company is tanking and we've put on a whole bunch of bad loans, but everyone's still getting a big bonus.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, some of this has come to the fore. I mean, what was that movie which came out? The Big Short was actually out and did a semi-decent job of explaining one of the problems of the financial industry.
Mm-hmm.
And you should probably also read the books that that was based on.
Mm-hmm.
Who wrote that? Let's see.
The same guy that made Moneyball.
Yeah.
Michael Lewis.
Yeah, Michael Lewis. But he's written a whole bunch of books about the financial industry and Wall Street, which are quite interesting reads about the short sellers and also the high-frequency traders and the little systems they've put in place to effectively allow them to earn lots and lots of money with really no risk on their end.
Yeah.
Which means they're not providing a service. The whole point of making a market is you're taking on a certain degree of risk in return for the percentage that you sort of skim off the top. Yeah. However, if you've gamed the system so effectively everybody else is taking the risk, then what service are you actually providing? You're certainly not making the markets. You're just trading ahead of other people's trade so that they have to pay you a percentage to buy what they were going to buy anyway.
But even then, like, just to go maybe a little bit more into the political end of this, because we're getting into general stuff as opposed to just the Panama Papers. Like, no, this is giving, for better or worse, a lot of power now to what's a bunch of people who were on the political fringe that are coming to the forefront, because the media even now is not doing a good job reporting on the Panama Papers. They've kind of turned it into a gossipy thing of, did David Cameron have money in his father's trust that is mentioned in the Panama Papers? The president of Iceland is the prime minister of Iceland is resigning over this. They're talking about it in that extent, but they're not explaining what the papers mean and what's happening in it. For that, you pretty much are having to go to the alt media for it. And for that matter, like, it's the alt political sides that are giving the solutions for it. No one, as far as I could hear in the mainstream political parties, has come up with their solution or their platform on it. In fact, as far as I could see, they've ignored it.
No, they've come up with various things to sound like they're doing something about it. There's various things about, how this sort of offshore banking is really wrong. They need to reform the tax code. That Panama has been very, very naughty and needs to be punished. There's various noise about it, but yes, there's not a lot in the mainstream media actually trying to explain or get people who understand to explain exactly what is going on and how these people are able to get away with it.
Yes, but the people on mainly in the internet and the alt media are having a massive buffet from it, and definitely are explaining it, which is really weird considering it's the mainstream media that should have the resources to do it. Like, I have not seen Paul Krugman give his solutions or write his column, at least not yet. Maybe he has as well writing this or something, but still, he hasn't given his solutions for it or anything like that, or his analysis.
I'm sure various people will come out with various theories.
Yeah.
We'll see how many of those theories include possibly putting a bunch of people in jail.
I'm gonna say very little. Again, this is something from the alt politics, which, for better or worse, is gaining a massive amount of power, and this is going to feed that power. Like, UKIP won the European Parliament elections, and they're going to gain more power from this, as well as other groups. Bernie Sanders, this is exactly what he needed. Like, it is in some ways Hillary Clinton's worst nightmare come to life, because she's heavily connected to these banks. He has finally taken the gloves off with her, and he's been really pushing to try and get the normal number of delegates above her, and I'm actually starting to think he's going to do it.
Well, that's the thing. Right now, all he really needs is not for Hillary Clinton's name to be mentioned, but people associated with Hillary Clinton's name to be mentioned.
Oh yeah, and other people are doing all the work for her. No one has forgotten how connected she is to the banks, or that little debate performance where when she Sanders talked about how Wall Street was doing this stuff, and then she tried to make it about 9/11.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. There really is a new noble class, which is the class itself is sort of above the law, is protected by the government, and is bailed out when they get in trouble.
Just to say, just also with Hillary Clinton, is a bit of a tangent. You can tell how worried her campaign is, because today Bill Clinton went out and actually attacked Black Lives Matters.
Really?
Yes, he actually did.
What did he attack them over?
Uh, a few things, but mainly about being thugs, as I understand it.
Yeah, but
Uh,
some of them have been thugs about a lot of different things, and a lot of the times people have cheered them on for it.
Yes, now to be fair, in this instant, and you can find it on Breitbart and a bunch of other sites, he was being interrupted by protesters, but he then pretty much decided to extend his middle finger to them, metaphorically, and told them off. Now,
Okay.
now the Clintons are really, at least from in my perspective, are really worried. Like, even from the little debate Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders had, you could see how nasty the debate between the two have actually become at this point. As Sanders really does feel he can win, and Hillary Clinton knows it. Or
Well, I mean, at this point, can push, win or lose. Sanders is going to push his message all the way to the convention.
mhm.
I mean, he has no reason not to at this point, because, I mean, he got into this just wanting to push his message and not really thinking he was going to win. And
Yes.
now he actually has a chance of winning, and there's no point not pushing his message, especially during a time where it's becoming more and more obvious that there is this protected class which has been taking advantage of everyone.
Yes, and also to be quite frank, Hillary Clinton has been pretty freaking horrible to him throughout this entire campaign. Half the reason he's doing so well is just because he, up till more or less now, he actually did stay above it. And she just kept being pretty freaking terrible, which you usually don't see from a front runner due to someone that up till now had no chance of winning.
Yeah, but Hillary Clinton has pretty much done it every single time.
Yes, she has, and it has screwed her every single time, and it's screwing her now. And there is a chance, in my opinion, she might actually lose New York, especially with this.
Yes, no, this is the exact sort of thing, which especially if it explodes even more into the public, and there's more revelations to come, that it could really hurt her campaign. I mean, it's her biggest vulnerability, effectively, to the left, is her ties to very dubious financial institutions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Dubious financial institutions, which are now giant corporations, which are apparently too big to fail.
And are still too big to fail, and are still screwing everyone.
Oh, they're even bigger now.
Oh, yes, they are. And yeah, no, she is going to face probably a challenge in the Democratic convention, especially if Sanders surpasses her in normal delegates. And I think there's a good chance she's going to have a lot of trouble from this. The Republicans are probably going to end up coming out fine out of this, and this might end up being their time, how the Republican convention goes. But also, back with Vladimir Putin, right? A lot of people, even including myself, said, Vladimir Putin is a terrible person, but at least he is doing what he feels is right for Russia. That idea has effectively been destroyed.
Oh, come on now. Everybody knew Vladimir Putin and his friends was doing this. This was pretty much an open secret.
The scale of it was not. Look, to a certain extent, it's Russia. The way things work is a certain level of corruption, unfortunately, not something I agree with. However, the scale of it and the amount Putin seems to, or his close associates have been directly involved in it, is effectively treason. By Putin's own moral standards he has set, he should be taken out and shot or given polonium poisoning.
What? They have just been keeping the funds of Mother Russia safe and secure in the Panamanian offshore accounts in case they are raided by the CIA.
Yeah. Bullshit. Look, at this point, only true fanatics that no amount of evidence was going to convince them that Putin is bad is going to support him from this point on. His reputation internationally is fucked.
His reputation internationally was fucked a long time ago. And this is nothing that anybody didn't expect. The only thing this is really going to be a problem for is currently the Russian economy is pretty shit. And it looks like it's going to be getting a lot worse. And this is
Yes.
the worst time for him to have some sort of big international expose on about how much money him and his friends have been shoving into international bank accounts rather than securing them inside secret Russian bank accounts. So, yes, this is going to be bad for him, but primarily it's going to be bad for him just because the Russian economy is so crappy, and this looks really, really bad right now. If the Russian economy was doing fine and he was busy conquering various minor neighboring countries, nobody would give a crap about this.
Yep, and also now that he's formed his elite national guard led by his former bodyguard, yeah, this is a pretty bad moment. And hopefully it'll make things more difficult for him and a lot of other leaders. Like, I mean, going on from him, just the European leaders in general have been really screwed and out of position on the whole migrant crisis, international terrorism, and their own bank bailouts. This is probably going to be one of the last nails. No, this is one of the last nails of the coffin. Outside of massive reforms, I think the EU and a lot of these parties are going to be done.
Oh no, if this gets tied back to a whole bunch of Brussels bureaucrats and other people, then yeah, there's a good chance the UKIP campaign to pull the UK out of the EU will succeed. UKIP will actually become a major party in the UK, and a bunch of other countries will start looking around and thinking, do we really want to be part of this party?
Yeah, no.
But we shall see how far this goes, and also whether this lovely tip-off leads to possibly more tip-offs. Or,
Yeah.
once again, if any country will come out and actually use this as evidence to prosecute people and get them to roll over on more corruption.
Well, here's the thing, right? Despite a lot of leakers having been prosecuted and having their lives ruined, for better or worse, and all of the other stuff that has happened, people are still leaking things. No, and it's being spread around, and people are getting a better and better handle on what has actually been going on. And now that we have the internet and alt media, people are still processing it and getting the word out there. And the current attempts at censorship are not working.
Yes, and for some reason, the regular mainstream media has decided to cover these things only when they have to and in the most blandest ways possible.
Oh, yes. And again, they're the ones with the resources. This is something you would have expected years ago, The Economist, to have a full magazine issue covering every last bit of it. Or at least a special issue just for it. And that also goes for other publications like the New York Times, for example, or even the BBC. Like, at least the BBC is doing a better job than most, but it pales in comparison to what they can do with their resources.
Well, they seem to be far too concerned with how this will affect their friends and people they actually like and the people they actually want to be in charge of various governments. So, while they don't technically break their journalistic ethics by actually outright supporting them, they're slow and reluctant to do anything which might damage them. And as a result, they've lost a huge amount of credibility, at least in the online community, where there certainly are still a lot of people who don't like Trump. effectively they're only covering things which damage Trump and never covering anything which is actually a, well, legitimately an attack, legitimately an illegitimate attack on Trump, they tend not to cover.
Well, that's the thing. They've infantiled themselves. Like, even with Bernie Sanders, right? And or Donald Trump and others. Like, I'll stick with Donald Trump for a moment. They're the ones that have turned Donald Trump's campaign into a he said, she said catfight. A reality thing that we all get to watch. Yeah, he has been in disrespectful as a politician, and he has been shutting out his insults. But no, he has made also a lot of policy points. And if they had just decided, well, you know what, he's a bastard, but here is his policy points, he probably wouldn't be doing as well as he is in the campaign, and we probably would have had a better campaign overall.
Or if you have somebody who rushes the stage in attempt to shut him down at one of his events, that you don't treat them like they're a hero.
Yeah.
Or if you cover the fact that while some Trump supporters have been complete assholes to the protesters, there's been some protesters who've been assholes to the Trump supporters, you might have a little more credibility when you say something about how insane one of Trump's statements is.
Mm-hmm.
But no, effectively, if it comes to some sort of thing which will embarrass the people that you believe need to be in charge against all these evil other people, let's not cover it, or only cover it when we're actually forced to cover it because the alt media has spread the news everywhere. Let's not cover, rapes in Germany if those rapes happen to be politically inconvenient.
No.
Let's not cover rapes in the United Kingdom if those rapes aren't politically inconvenient. Let's only cover the crimes which are politically convenient, and then cover the crimes which are made up by people because they are really politically convenient.
Yes, let's talk about how wonderful Justin Trudeau is and how good he looks, and then complain that people are only voting for Justin Trudeau because of how he looks, and question why people haven't looked at his policies when they haven't even published really his policies.
Yes, that'd be nice to actually have Canadian journalists investigate what the actual policies of the current government are. As in what they actually are, not what they say they are, what they say they're going to be, but what they actually are.
Yes, what they are and what the implications of those policies are.
But no, Justin Trudeau has saved us from the evil Harper and his conservative evilness. Therefore, we need to give him a grace period in which we don't criticize him for when he does something stupid, but only point out the good things he's doing. No, the media has effectively given up effectively it's put itself in the position where it's very easy for somebody to come along and censor it based on the fact that it is effectively not doing the news.
No, it's not. And it is decided to make enemies of a bunch of groups that, for better or worse, I think are going to end up being the future of the democratic world. Like, for whatever good or bad you can say about Bernie Sanders supporters, they're becoming the future of the Democratic Party. And things like this leak have fed them. Trump supporters are going to be the future of the Republican Party, as is the Tea Party from Ted Cruz's supporters, and the Libertarians for that matter. Like, no, the anti-establishment of the Republican Party, one way or another, has won. They are going to be the Republican Party. The Republican establishment is on its death knell. And a lot of these European governments are going to be done.
The Republican Party, the establishment of the Republican Party, actually effectively lost control of the party a while back. I mean, when you have Paul Ryan as the supposed establishment figure of the Republican Party, Paul Ryan is a hardcore Tea Party member. He just looks reasonable in comparison to Ted Cruz and Donald Trump.
Okay, agreed, but point still stands. They're done. They're losing power, and the people they're losing power to are the people that have been demonized and effectively slandered by the mainstream media.
Well, yeah, no, they've effectively made enemies of the people who are probably going to be running a large number of countries very soon.
Yes.
And they haven't really made that many friends in the process.
No, and they seem to be delusionally trying to go down with the ship because I swear they seem to think they really have this immense kind of power, and if they keep playing the roulette wheel, they're going to win.
Well, look, effectively, they have won certain elections in the past little while. They won the Canadian election. They effectively got Justin Trudeau to be the nominee for the Liberal Party and then got him elected as Prime Minister. They won.
They also very closely lost that. Up until 2 weeks before the actual election, Trudeau was losing badly.
Yeah, but that was still the thing they pushed. I mean, I don't think they actually expected to win as much as they actually did, but they did. And now they're giddy and happy about it. Look, the forces of a certain wing of progressivism, or sometimes called the regressive left, have effectively been winning right up until now. And so far, they haven't suffered a major loss yet.
Yeah, except they've been getting closer and closer.
I mean, some little skirmish with video gamers on the internet where a certain part of them gets their ass kicked before they turn to more important political matters, like the political campaigns in the United States. That was really minor league stuff. One tiny little setback on the internet, which almost nobody who isn't a hardcore gamer gives a crap about. I mean,
Yeah.
prior to that, they won in the comic book industry. They won in the movie industry. They won in the convention industry.
Yeah, but at the same time,
They won in the atheism community.
that was a little hiccup. But that's the thing. They've kept getting closer and closer to losing. Justin Trudeau came pretty close to losing. Right now, they're again right on the edge. No, this is the problem.
No, Justin Trudeau did not come close to losing. He wasn't in a position to lose. He hadn't won yet. Every advance was a gain. And he won far more than they expected.
Fine in the end. But again, starting in the election and a few weeks before it, he was polling pretty terrible. And even right before the election, it looked like he was still going to end up with a minority government. Still, regardless, fine, we'll say that they've been winning everything for the most part, but that's the problem. They only need to lose a few times to lose pretty much everything. It's the whole gambler fallacy I like to bring up. Yeah, you can put money on the roulette wheel, and even in a roulette wheel, where you win 99% of the time, if you're betting the house, which is what they're doing, once that 1% comes around, you lose.
I don't really see how that analogy applies.
Because there's a point when they should have stopped or measured things. It's quite clear, like, It's quite clear there's a point with Donald Trump where they should have just focused on his policies and taken a bit of a step back. The same thing applies to Bernie Sanders. There's a good argument that their incessant attacks upon him is what's actually created his popularity at the moment.
Well, let's be careful here, because I'm not sure Bernie Sanders was really being attacked by the same people. Bernie Sanders is being attacked by the establishment left. And the so-called regressives are not the establishment left. They've just been being backed by the establishment left as a useful tool and proxy to advance their own interests and allowed to, well, basically wreck their way into a whole bunch of industries and college campuses.
Yes.
This is actually, in many ways, the fight between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton is the first real split between the mainstream left, or, well, I shouldn't say mainstream left, I should say actually the establishment left, as in the one which represents current elites on the left, and actually the progressive wing of the left.
Yeah,
This
but
is actually an actual break, a fight, an internal fight.
in a way, true. But the establishment left has backed the alternative left or the progressive left far more than it should, thinking it could, in my opinion, thinking it could control it, and thinking it didn't matter and they could always put the genie back in the bottle. And it's becoming quite clear they can't. And the alt left, even though they've gotten a lot of support from the mainstream left and the media, does not mean they like that media or they don't want it to also go away and be replaced with what effectively is propaganda news outlets.
Oh, no. I mean, the fact is, whenever they don't follow the narrative they want, the regressive left has attacked even friendly media wholesale. No, I fully expect, especially if this gets more and more contentious, the Democratic convention, when it comes around, is going to make the fights at the current Trump rallies look tame.
Yep. No, it might be quite brutal. And they basically helped create it. And this is the problem, right? They've let things go too far, or they are overestimating their own power. And things have gotten to a point where it's just uncontrollable. They can't fix it, and they don't seem to know how to fix it.
There's a way to fix it. It involves clamping down on those who are actually attacking liberal values, and effectively it would mean they would lose the next election. So they're not going to do it.
Yes, they're not going to do it.
Then they, just like the Republicans, have allowed a certain section of their party to roam out of control, and now they have to work out when they're going to do the hard work and, well, politically damaging work of reining it all back in. That is, if they can rein it all back in.
Yeah, if they can rein it back in, and they and others have left the world in a pretty tattered state, there is a tremendous amount of work to right everything again.
Yeah, well, they're going to have to work it out. Either that, or they're effectively going to face the fate they now have wished on the Republicans, and the Democratic Party is effectively going to break up.
Yeah, and there's a chance, well, I don't think it's as good a chance, there's a chance the Republican Party might break up too.
No, there's a definite possibility of that. I think it's becoming more and more like
Hello?
handle that brokered convention.
Yeah,
I mean,
no.
the smart to give Donald Trump an honorable out, where it looks like he's playing kingmaker for whoever gets to be the nominee. presuming he's not the nominee. But if they manage to effectively alienate him, alienate Ted Cruz, and just have a giant war between the two stacks of delegates between them, in which they eventually end up settling on one of them, then yeah, it's pretty much going to rip the party apart. And a lot of disaffected people are just going to leave.
Yes, no, it really will. And will probably set up their own stuff. No, we're heading into an era of mass political upheaval, and a lot of changes are finally going to take place for better or worse. The real question, the real problem I see is, in a way, like, we are, at least the change is happening and we need the change. The real problem is few people have really emerged as the sane, reasonable voices to kind of guide us in the direction we need things to change,
Well,
and be reasonable about it.
That almost never happens. Look, the fact is, when you get the elites of any civilization effectively becoming more and more corrupt, they don't suddenly decide to be reasonable, or even have a portion of them which suddenly decides to be reasonable. That's very rare, and usually only happens after they realize, oh crap, we're going to lose it all. What you get is some populists and demagogues rising up, and alt thinkers, and you just sort of hope that the one which eventually wins isn't too insane.
Yes, but see, that's the thing. In the not too insane, like in the Russian Revolution, Kerensky was actually quite sane. It was doing what was probably for the best. And then he was replaced. You have good examples like the American Revolution, and then you have bad examples like the French Revolution and Robespierre.
Yeah, as I say, populists and demagogues come out as the social order begins to disintegrate.
Yes. And right now I'm seeing we have a lot of potential Robespierres running around right now, and not that many populist but relatively sane people running around. Personally, I'm currently pinning my hopes on Ryan, the Republican Party.
Well, he would be the most, I guess, reasonable compromise the Republicans could come up with. They would have to effectively shove him into doing it, like they shoved him into becoming speaker.
Yeah, but he do a good job. He can be reasonable. He isn't Lucifer like Ted Cruz is, and he isn't a bit of a buffoon like Trump is.
Yeah, all the evidence says he'd be better choice than either of those two. Whether that's going to be what comes out of a convention, I really don't know.
Well, either way, this is the better case scenario, because as things go, we're getting more and more into the extremes of things like the destruction of the European Union. Whatever is going to emerge in Canadian politics, because the NDP is having their leadership convention this weekend, and they're going to decide on Mulcair's fate, and I would bet good money that Mulcair is going to be done. And while in a way I didn't like him, I'll admit he was quite a reasonable man. So he's done, I think. We have no idea what's going to end up in the Conservative Party. And I don't think the Liberals are going to last very long with the way they've been running the country, even if the media backs them 100% again in the election 4 years from now.
Well, actually, the Conservative Convention is going to be a bit interesting. You'll notice that some of the Conservative leadership candidates have begun actually talking to the alt media. And by alt media, I mean pretty much rebel media.
Yeah.
Because rebel media is once again being denied press credentials by the government of Alberta.
I've been going back and forth on that issue, but essentially, yes, people have been trying to deny them press credentials.
Well, you'll notice that people have actually, at least on the Conservative side, been actually talking to them. And now we're going to see whether that actually converts into actual Conservative Party members, those who can afford to go to the convention, actually showing up and voting for the people that are on the media that supports them.
Yes. But it looks like, I see that's probably going to end up changing, especially also as there's the point that they have the problem that in Canada, for example, they can crack down on the alt media here, right? A little bit. But more and more, other portions of the alt media, like in the United States, is covering what's happening here. And it's not pretty.
No, it's not just in the United States, because really the alt media stretches pretty much all over the place. I mean, there are people in the UK who are covering the Canadian situation.
Yes.
Along with people in the States and some guy in Romania.
Yes, but it's not happening pretty, and people can still view that.
No. In fact, everybody's sort of waiting around to see exactly what happens in Canada, because effectively Canada is going to be a test case.
Yeah, and it's not, in my opinion, going too well.
Well, to be fair, we haven't really seen the implementation of much yet.
We haven't seen the implementation of much yet, but it's clear that outside of Justin Trudeau's supporters, and there's a lot of them, if you're not a Justin Trudeau supporter, at this point, you fucking hate him. There is no middle ground here. Like, I talk about how I don't like Justin Trudeau and his policies, right? But I'm actually, when you get right down to it and talk to a lot of people and see what they have to say, a moderate on it. I'm at least able to say, well, he's done these things that I think are good, and this is why I don't like him. If you're not already a supporter, and outside of a few people like myself, you think that he's effectively the Antichrist.
Well, let's be careful. We're out west here.
I know I have a lot of other people I'm in contact with in the East and so on, right? And the thing is he is appealing to a large number of people, but it's mainly in that progressive circles and a lot of the alternative, in the alternative left, and just people that like a pretty face. If you're outside of that, right, and you're in the if you're a conservative, everything his government is doing is basically stabbing you in the heart. If you are an actual, basically a classical liberal or centrist or in the left, right, it is making you want to vomit. Even if you've just been following politics for a long time, you understand that his government is already becoming an embarrassment. Like, you have things coming up every day. Like just yesterday, or I think it was yesterday or a few days ago, the defense minister asking Canadians what they feel should be done with the Canadian military. Like, the sentiment in a way is appreciated, but for certain things, but no, the defense minister should not ask that.
Well, he can ask that, but it's not really a useful question to just ask what you want done.
Yeah.
He's the defense minister. He's supposed to come up with options.
That, and he's
supposed to present them to the prime minister.
And in regards to things like defense, he is one of the people that has access to classified information. So he is supposed to be able to make better decisions in regards to defense than everyone else. Like, look, certain things like military issues aren't exactly a democracy. Yeah. They are to an extent, but at some point you're making the freaking decisions. You're not having a nice friendship committee to figure it out. And that's the thing. To people that understand how these things run, they understand how bad this actually is. You don't have things like that with, well, you don't treat defense like that. You don't have go to foreign conferences with a massive 1,000-person entourage. You don't treat the government this way, which they are well treating.
Well, I think my bigger problem with his government is just actually their lack of getting on and doing stuff. We can't really judge them on just things they say and, well, admittedly, not particularly bright things about bringing that many people to an international conference in Switzerland. We have to see what they're actually going to do. Like, are they going to give $1 billion to Bombardier? Are they just going to talk about whether they're going to give $1 billion to Bombardier? What are they actually going to try and do to fix the Canadian economy, not just sounding out various plans like having a universal income that they might test out in Ontario?
Yes.
That's the thing. They need to do some things. And right now, I'm more judging them on the fact that they can't seem to get around to actually doing anything than any sort of stupid thing they're doing, because they aren't really doing anything yet. I mean, some of the things they put out in their budget, some of which seems to be still up for debate for some reason, do seem like they're not particularly well thought out, like their new ideas about banking regulations.
Well, this is though the problem, right? I understand the need that you have to accept politics and what public opinion is in a democracy. But part of the problem with the current establishment is there is a massive lack of leadership. Sorry, that's my phone. Hold on a second. Victor Vargas here. How may I help you? Yes.
All right, well, Victor is away.
Oh yeah, no, I know her. Yeah, I'm a little bit busy now, but yeah, no, she's actually a pretty good server and she's fairly reputable.
And meanwhile, I guess I can explain that this particular issue and the fact that people are getting away with doing things which other people would never be allowed to get away with, like effectively stealing millions and millions of dollars, is something which is... Victor's back.
Yes.
It pisses me off a lot. Anyway.
But no, back with my point was leadership. No, like On the Panama Papers, they're not showing leadership. And on a lot of these issues, they're not showing leadership. The liberal government has taken a stance of muddling through whatever they have as the government currently. The European governments have been muddling through things like the banking crisis and the migrant issues. And generally, the establishment has taken the approach of we're going to do the bare minimum and then hope it goes away. And that includes President Obama.
Well, that's the thing. Obama was there for the end of the 2008 crisis, and the actions which were taken since then were just not up to dealing with another crisis. The situation, if anything, has actually gotten worse, even with Dodd-Frank in place. And while I don't think the Panama Papers by themselves are going to cause any sort of banking crisis, it effectively, especially with the names of various banks being tied to it, could help tip the balance in something which is already going wrong. And there's a fair amount of evidence that a lot has been going wrong.
Yes, and
they're so scared of it that they don't really want to upset the banks right now, just in case whatever's going wrong goes horribly wrong right away.
Well, this is the thing. It's like the little kid that did something wrong and then doesn't want to deal with it, and it just gets worse and worse. Like a lot of these problems could have been solved by now, right? Like you had, like, you know what? With the Russians and their aggression, if we had clamped down on things like just enforce the red line in Syria, we wouldn't be where we are now with the Russians. If we had implemented a lot of the banking measures that were necessary when the political capital was there during the banking crisis or just afterwards, we wouldn't be where we are now. And the list just goes on. Like they're just leaving it around and they're just letting it get worse and worse. They're letting the infection just fester till, well, we're going to just have a major collapse, a major systemic failure.
Yeah, no, they're effectively letting a certain privileged class continue on doing whatever they can get away with doing. They haven't put the fear of the law into them. They haven't even put the fear of losing their money into them. And it's going to just get worse and worse, and it's going to drive the rise of more and more demagogic figures claiming to be able to fix the problem until the whole thing collapses.
Yes. And it's going to collapse. And their inability to show leadership on this means that the Donald Trumps, the Ryans, the Bernie Sanders of the world are going to inherit the world, and they're going to implement their solutions for better or worse.
Yeah, well,
and that's in the democratic world.
Well, if we're talking about the non-democratic world, we can talk about how when the Chinese premier came to the United States, people actually got up the courage inside China to speak out about how bad the economic situation was there.
Yeah. Now that happened, and the government has become legitimately afraid of how much people are against them on a lot of things. Like they're allowing things. It's been weird. They've been clamping down on some things, but on other things they've been letting it go. Like the movie that's come out recently, The Mermaid by Stephen Chow, which basically is an indictment of the current environmental situation.
Well, frankly, this thing, I think they would rather have the public be distracted by the current environmental situation than all the bullshit which has been going on with the Chinese economy. But in the meantime, they are putting in some rather draconian, old school, Deng Xiaoping Stalinist media controls back in place.
Yeah, but they have a large number of people with the computer knowledge to get around it. And while they keep talking about this time we're going to have our firewall or our controls, people know and are able to figure out how to get around it and have also other means of transferring information. They're not competent enough to control it. And also, there's frankly, the other problem they and the Russians both have. They've really focused on patriotism. And part of the problem, especially Putin has right now, is that when you focus on patriotism and you're shown to be a traitor, patriotism causes you to say, kill the traitor, even if it's the head of state. Now, for whatever you can say about nationalism and patriotism, if you use it, yeah, you probably could use it as a weapon against your enemies quite well. But if you're found to also be unpatriotic and turned out to be using people, they're going to kill you and do what's right. They feel is right for the country. And I used that what's
I
right. And
don't think anybody's going to try and kill Vladimir Putin just yet.
I mean, maybe not kill or remove, but his hold is going to be weakening. And people are definitely going to be looking to replace him. And if he goes, a lot of his supporters and the people that have done this are going to die.
Oh, yes, no. Once he goes, you have to purge his supporters. But the thing is, who are you going to replace him with? He has systematically removed anybody who has a spine from the Russian government. There is nobody left who is not in jail or fled the country who actually is strong enough to run Russia.
And then we get into the scenario of the Russian Civil War, which I think is becoming a real possibility right now, along with the massive war in the Middle East and in Africa, and possibly a few civil wars, aside from the one in Russia. No, things are fucked.
Well, we'll just have to see. I think the current elites are basically going to push their way through this for the next little while and just let the pressure build up more and more. I effectively think, other than shutting down the Panama branches of the offshore company system, probably very little is going to come out of the Panama Papers, unless something can actually be directly tied to somebody of importance, in which case they'll probably just have a difficult time politically. But yeah, it's all going to build up, and it's all going to push the rise of alt media and alt politics. And some of that's a good thing.
Oh yeah, some of it is a good thing. The problem is there needs to be some cooler heads to rise up in the alt side of things for a lot of the problems in the past to not be repeated.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, every so often you get a revolution which doesn't suck, but the vast majority of them suck.
Yes, and this one is going to suck. Even in the nicest scenario I can plot out in my mind, the United States, especially with the alt left, has positioned themselves to have probably a few years of civil unrest and violence, no matter how this turns out in the end. A lot, in some ways, it's completely justified, and in some ways not. And I say in civil unrest in the more traditional terms, in people getting shot and things being burnt down in riots.
Well, look, the crime rates in certain major cities have jumped up tremendously against the progression which has been going on since the late 80s of the crime rates dropping like a rock. Suddenly they're rocketing up in certain major cities.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to continue to being a problem until they actually decide how they're going to deal with it in a non-insane way. But the other thing is that Donald Trump is talking about getting out of NATO. Bernie Sanders, effectively's foreign policy is largely to pull America back from everything except possibly assisting in some sort of fight against ISIS.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, the
NATO alliance is
political and possible economic collapse of the West is going to lead to the opening up of all sorts of things which we haven't seen in the rest of the world for a long time.
Oh, and there's a lot of grudges to settle, and a lot of people that have built up large armies. No, there's a good chance NATO will actually, it is a really good chance at this point NATO is going to collapse because a lot of nations like Canada, the Canadian government currently don't seem to believe in it or want to be a part of it. And well, the Turks and Erdogan have their ambitions. And other countries, like I've said, that haven't been getting in the news lately, but really, they've created a pretty dangerous future situation for Poland where Poland's been really alienated. They've built a large army. And if the Russian threat collapses, Poland's going to have ideas. Yes. And they'll probably carry out those ideas. Finland is in the same camp and will probably also carry out those ideas. Other countries you could probably think of will likely try and carry out those ideas with the armies they've built up, and a lot of their neighbors have been drawing down lately.
No, yeah, the fact is a lot of countries have seen the status quo and thought we don't need to spend any money on this. We don't need to keep up our NATO commitments. And some other countries have been drawing up and readying themselves for the possible chaos to come.
Yes. Because that's the thing. Yeah, it's the logic of, well, Poland wouldn't do that, but even if it did, well, the United States and Turkey would clamp down on it because they're members of NATO. It doesn't apply if Turkey clearly doesn't care at this point. And if the United States pulls up, if Poland's government decided to say, fuck it, there's really no one that could stop them. Even, I would say, the French at this point would be hard-pressed, along with the British, to actually stop the army Poland is building at the moment.
Well, look, the army Poland is building would not be aimed at the French or the British.
No, it's aimed at the Russians at the moment.
Yes, it would be used possibly in a Russian collapse to occupy chunks of Belarus and Western Ukraine, and possibly to punish the Swedes for being assholes.
Yes. And Finland the same way too, but that's already pretty dangerous. Hell, it's dangerous if Russia or factions of Russia decide to settle the score with Turkey at the moment, and vice versa.
Well, effectively, that war has gotten proxy war has gotten pretty hot. The Kurds effectively are now fighting the Syrian opposition to control more and more of northern Syria and cut off the border with Turkey.
Why not? They've been flooded with Russian arms and advisors on a scale they have never seen in their history. What?
Well, the reason why not is effectively this is sort of screwing over their traditional supporters, like NATO and the United States.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure the Israelis give a crap about this.
They do not.
So effectively, we have NATO-backed troops and CIA-backed troops beating the crap out of each other, while the Russians funnel more and more arms and equipment to one side. And the Kurds look to establish their greater Kurdistan along the entire border with Turkey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's no real leadership to stop this dark future from coming to pass. And hell, I don't even think it's possible at this point to stop it from coming to pass.
Look, at this point, I'm not sure it's worth trying to stop some of this. At this point, I think even a sane US government, which wanted to keep NATO together and possibly make it more functional, is in the position where it really should intervene directly in settling the Syrian situation.
Yeah.
At this point, you sort of just want to make sure the Syrian situation doesn't infect the entire rest of the Middle East.
Yeah, no. The collapse is going to happen. It's just managing how it happens and who ends up being the winner. And I guess if classical liberalism or some new form of sanity will prevail, or we're going to end up with a lasting age of darkness. No, look, like that's really the worry I have. Like even in Canada, like in a way we're pretty isolated, and the best case scenario is that we're going to end up with a new government after time that's going to reverse a bunch of stuff and make some improvements in Canada. Canada can weather things pretty well. At the same time, the current Liberal Party and the progressive left that is running it has shown a lot of anti-democratic, authoritarian tendencies. And if they get scared enough, they'll start cracking down way more than is wise or ethical.
Well, also, we need to see what the leadership of the other two parties ends up being. Because Harper's government wasn't particularly friendly to civil rights either. And we'll have to see who the new conservative leader is and what sort of brand of conservatism he or she represents. And then also the NDP has its own little fight to deal with its own brand of crazies.
Yes. Yeah, and some people are a lot more extreme. Like on the alt-right, well, we have effectively a new fascist movement. And while to a certain extent I agree certain groups of people should be punished, a bunch of them also seem to want to go much further than that. And on the alt left, well, you have, well, actually a similar problem, to be quite frank.
Well, that's the problem. During moments of crisis, you often just get competing groups of authoritarians who want to impose their solution. But anyway, I believe we've run this
Yes, we
depressing
have
topic.
beaten this to death. Well, it's depressing, but look, even if it is in these little chat rooms, which barely anyone's currently listening to, this has to be discussed and thought about. Like, look, it's better to think about this stuff now while we're still calm and rational and figure out what the possible solution and course to chart is than when things are going to hell.
No, that's the thing. Most people aren't going to really pay attention to this until things are going to hell. And right now, not a lot of people are listening.
Well, that's in situations, most people aren't going to listen until it really hits them. But that doesn't mean the more intellectual side of things doesn't need to discuss this. Have the information out there and have things thought out so a plan can be implemented rationally when people start listening.
No, that's true. And the fact is, the internet, these leaks, is one of the greatest tools ever that when people finally decide to deal with the situation, they can actually find the information which tells them what the situation actually is.
Yes. And people need to know that. And people that are going to be quite frank, take over and be the future, have to consider these possibilities and be informed. Like, that is ironically the great thing about the internet and even 8chan and places like that and in the alt-right is to get informed and have a plan, because usually when you think things through and have a plan, it usually ends up being more sane than the one you're going to think of when everything has gone to shit. All right, but anyways, we've been in this, and that's a good place to end it. So I'll sign off now.
Yep.
All
Good
right,
night and good luck.
bye.